Ask Robin Black, episode 7. Cool beans. Last week, I said we were 8 weeks to the day last week when shooting something. And we were wrong. I was wrong. Today is 8 weeks to the day. So we just gained a week of life, which is killer. This week, we're going to Dallas. And this will be the last Ask Robin Black we shoot before Dallas. But I'd really like to shoot one in Dallas, somewhere there. If we get a 3-4 hour chunk, there's this really cool area called Deep Ellum. And they have these cool kind of bars that kind of have the vibe that we like. And I wouldn't mind just sipping a tequila and sitting down with Mark and you guys in Dallas. If we do that, the questions can't really be about UFC 211, because by the time we do it and get it up, it won't really make sense. But if you guys have any questions about sort of traveling or working or things connected to fighting and being in these different cities, or any thoughts that work in that kind of setting, or thoughts about, I don't know, things that make sense to you for us to shoot in this cool region of Dallas, follow me and Mark on Twitter. I'm Robin Black MMA. What are you? Mark is on the air. And our man Akasambo as well. And hit us up with the hashtag Ask Robin Black, because it'll be really fun. I'm not guaranteeing we can hit Deep Ellum while we're there, because we've already confirmed that we're going to be talking to Eddie Alvarez Friday or the Saturday that he is fighting. John Anik confirmed we're going to sit down. We're going to talk about the art of calling fights and whatever else. John's a cool dude. You guys I don't know how much you've been exposed to him just as a dude, but he's a cool dude. Demetrius Johnson said we're going to try to do something. Jorge Masvidal, win or lose. You know what? Watch as I leave here for 2 seconds. Mark will probably put an edit here. That's totally cool. Also, if he did put an edit there, that was magic. I was just closing the door. In where we work here, there's all kinds of different artists in here, including tattoo artists that are directly down the stairs right over there. So we're surrounded by really interesting people. But yes, so Dallas, Eddie, John Anik, Demetrius Johnson said we'll get together. Mike Brown, one of the top coaches at American Top Team, we're going to talk about fighting. Duke Rufus said we'll be getting together. I can't even remember who else we've already talked about. But Jorge Masvidal, win or lose, we're giving him a ride to the airport, and we will talk about the fight and about life, and Masvidal's cool. So this is going to be a really fun trip. But hit us up with some questions on Twitter, and hopefully we will take a little break in the middle of all that and answer them in a cool place in Dallas. But today, what's my phone doing? Today we will get to some questions. Okay, neat stuff today. I got stuff about Nate Diaz, Dana, George, and Bisping. We got some questions about Conor and Floyd. Of course, you can't talk about one without talking about the other. Martial arts in general, tough, and the comeback fighters on there. Some Bellator stuff, and Poirier and Alvarez. Actually, I'll take that question first, right off the top. It's at the end, but we'll put it at the top. From N8D1ZZI3. That's a lot of stuff. But thank you. What are your thoughts on the at Dustin Poirier and at E Alvarez fight? Can we get an epic breakdown? Okay, so at the time we're shooting this, which is like a Tuesday or something, we were going to put up Frankie versus Yair. Ramdean and I have already broken down Frankie versus Yair and Alvarez versus Poirier. We're going to put up Frankie versus Yair tomorrow. If you're watching this on the day we release it, it'll be out tomorrow. The Eddie Alvarez versus Poirier one, that fight is just spectacular. I don't know what this is. I just did a 2 thing here with 2. I don't know exactly what that is, but wicked fight. So Ramdean and I dug into it pretty good. A lot about who they are. You know, what are their tools? How do they use their tools? How does Poirier like to fight from southpaw? What's the game on the ground? Poirier really is very underrated on the ground, and Eddie's wrestling is stud-like. All those things matter. They always do, and the way they match up always matters. But in a fight like this, it's about sort of who they are, and who they are psychologically, and who they are viscerally, and that's what's fascinating about this fight. They're both killer fighters. They're both in jeopardy at all times against each other, but it's sort of what's going to be tested is who they are. and where Poirier is on the Sap Alvarez scale and where Eddie is right now on it. So that comes up tomorrow. Also tomorrow, Ramdeen and I are going, Ramdeen's coming in, and we're going to break down 6, 8, 9 fights coming up, including the potential fight between Duho Choi and Artem Lobov. So watch for those in the coming weeks. It's always good to have my boy Ramdeen in. You should see him when he gets here. He's just so frenzied. Like, he just can't wait to talk about fighting because his wife tolerates fighting, and his friends in Barrie, Ontario, where he lives, he's got a few people to talk to about fighting, but not on the level that we get to do it. So yes, Eddie Alvarez versus Dustin Poirier. If you're watching this on day one, it's coming out tomorrow. If you're watching this in 2019, well, it came out in May of 2017. Go back and watch it. See how we did. All right, let's keep going. It's a pleasure. I love this. I just love getting these questions, and I love kind of trying to figure them out. Okay. At Mavs, 2011 champs, 0. Or O. I don't know. Were they the champs then? I don't know anything about that. I have a question. I have a question mark. Why does Dana hate Nate Diaz? Now, why would you say that Dana hates Nate Diaz? It's an interesting thing, these details of personality and what we see and the emotional or relationship things that we project on these people. I see it all the time. And up close, you see people who apparently have a thing, or they didn't like each other, or this guy said this about this guy. But then when you know them and you see them, it's nothing like people think. Simple example, Ariel and I are friends. I will see him at 211. I will give him a hug. I will ask him about his family. It'll be great to see him. But if you were to ask people who just see one comment here or one thing over there, people say, oh, that guy, those guys don't like each other. Very much like that guy. Very simple example. First one that pops to mind from a personal standpoint. So Dana White and Nate Diaz. So I think if we're actually going to try to make some sense of it on a bigger scale, on a real scale, on a real scenario, in a way that might be of interest, or that, like we often try to do, might carry over into other things. So other people that we see in the world, trying to make sense of how they connect. The first thing I think you have to start with isn't what you heard someone say or what you saw or what tweet. That stuff is very irrelevant. Very quickly, if we think about what a tweet is, it is a momentary expression of a very small idea at the moment you felt it. Most of our lives, we have most hours, minutes, days, we have dozens, if not hundreds, of different emotions and ideas and opinions and feelings, right? Think about it. How you felt this morning when you were discouraged about one thing, and then later on in the day you got some great news and you felt different, and the sort of all the moving parts of your day. You were mad at this person, but now they did something nice and you really like them, and you realize, oh yeah, they're okay. When you were exhausted, you felt a certain way. When when I get off a plane for 20 hours, or you've been working nonstop, or even if you overly are engaged in digital or social media stuff, even that changes you. So the act of being on Twitter, for example, changes you emotionally at times. That's real. That's all real stuff. So if every moment of the day you expressed yourself, how you felt when you were mad, sad, scared, happy, excited, in love, all of those things, if we did that all day, we'd be like, what the hell is wrong with this person? You'd be kind of freaked out. But that's very normal. That's what it is to be human. So when you get a single quote, you just should never, you can never really, truthfully, you can choose to if you like, and we do that a lot in North America, but you cannot really just sit there and that tweet or comment or something said in an interview taken as a sentence, you don't have the information to be able to extrapolate how somebody feels about something. It's not real. I see it all the time. And the younger that somebody is, and this is not an ageist thing, this is, if you happen to be 25 right now, you've been very much in this world from the time that you were 13, in this digital and fast moving and moment to moment kind of world. So it's been part of how you've been exposed to the world. Whereas 65-year-old people, they are a little gentler with the way that they interact or the way they assign meaning to what one quote that they see. But I'll definitely see comments that people will say related to something they saw in an interview 2.5 years ago. Oh, this guy's always like that. That guy said one thing 2.5 years ago. So what am I getting at here? Am I answering, why does Dana hate Nate Diaz? No, not yet. I'm not answering that yet. But I'm trying to give you an idea to think about. One that I believe fully in. Something I think is very limiting for us. If we're going to go through the world and your boss said one thing or the girl said one thing and you keep assigning meaning to that one thing and assign then that you know how they feel about something, you're going to limit your ability to navigate the world. Really, seriously. And I see it all the time. TJ Dillashaw's a snake in the grass. Travis Brown hits women. Travis Brown was completely exonerated of ever doing that, including by his own wife, who said that, she exaggerated that under emotion, and that's common. Don't judge her either. I don't know and I've said this before, I don't know what I would do if I found out that my wife was leaving me for Justin Bieber. I might say she hit me. I don't know what I would do. I would have a weird emotional reaction. Justin Bieber's super famous. He's somewhat handsome. Ronda Rousey's super famous, and she's very handsome. Is that the right word for Ronda Rousey? She's very pretty. You may disagree with that. But who knows what you might do. But now you see something said one time, and that becomes fact forever. And then, TJ Dillis, there was a fascinating one last week, Ask Robin Black, 5 or 6, where two friends from Twitter that have been very supportive and encouraging, and we have online friendships over time. One was saying, oh my God, this TJ is... one started out saying, have you been watching Tough, man? This, what's his name? The champ. Garbrandt. Sorry. Cody, I have momentary lapses of your name. I don't know why. You're a spectacular athlete and a cool guy. Cody Garbrandt is a cool guy. I've got to chat with him a few times off camera. Very cool guy. So somebody was like, have you seen what a douchebag Cody Garbrandt is? It's like those are moments selected in a 24-hour day where he helped a woman across the street. He was kind to somebody else. He was a good friend. He was a good son. He was a good training partner. He was all of these things. And then you got 28 seconds of him yelling or douchebagging out, but now he's a douchebag. Did you see it? He's a douchebag. And then somebody else answered on Twitter and they were like, yeah, but that's because TJ Dillashaw's a snake in the grass. Neither of these things are true. These are momentary things shown to us in a giant 24-hour day, 7 days a week, 4+ weeks a month. And I know it's 4 weeks in a day or two a month, 12 months a year, all of that giant world of these human beings, and you get a minute. So it's very important if you want to exist in reality, to not see a quote and then start making assumptions based on that. I had a friend, Cody, who works at Fight Network, and he was out with my friend Evan and I, and we were all, hanging out. And he said, Evan, because Evan works with Henry Hooft. He's like, what are people going to think when Henry says, I don't work with people outside of, because he had one quote about something about training the highest level, focusing on the highest level fighters only right now. Cody's like, if I was one of his guys, and Evan's like, none of them read anything or if they read one quote, they wouldn't go, this one quote that I saw by Henry that may have been saying it out of the side of his mouth supersedes our 7-year relationship of all him being at my wedding and being close friends with my family and helping me through things and letting me sleep on his couch and whatever. It's like, why would I? They wouldn't even connect to it. But if we watch these things and think we know Nate Diaz or we know Dana White, we're out of our minds. We're not, and that goes for politicians and Beyonce. I always use Beyonce as a reference for a famous person. I'm not sure why. I think it's because she actually does seem somehow different than human. I don't know why. That could be just how she looks. She's very pretty. You may disagree. Yeah, you can't do that. So what I can tell you is Dana White does not hate Nate Diaz. I took the long way there, but he does not hate Nate Diaz. But what we can learn is we can gather lots of information about them and then try to theorize what their motives are. And I don't mean their motives written on a chalkboard. I mean their human motives, what they may be after. Let me start with Dana White. So I've met Dana on a bunch of occasions over the years, more over the last 2 years than before that, because he brought me in to interview me about contributing stuff for the UFC. And I have contributed stuff. I'm going to do a bunch of stuff in Dallas for UFC.com with my boy Matt and some of the Brazilian team, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm hoping to do more while we're there. So before you meet Dana, you may look at the surface, which is him swearing a lot and yelling a lot and being very tough. And why is he this way? And he treated this guy this way. And if you just look at that surface and you don't look at what's actually kind of going on, or if you're not informed in what's happening, like what does he do? What does that guy do? Or if you compartmentalize things, like, people will find one thing. Well, why don't they book BJ against whatever? It's like, can you imagine trying to being involved in conversations with hundreds of fighters and 700 staff and a new ownership and 30 arenas this year and digital and pay-per-view and et cetera? Like, where do you fit in the discussion of Artem Lobov's contract? You know what I mean? It's impossible. So what you start to see is, and this conversation would carry over for Mark Cuban or any of the, and it doesn't have to be a sports league, any of these CEOs on a high level. The problem that they face is time, right? So how do you address that? Now, another important ingredient with Dana White is he's single-minded. Right? Single-minded. Whatever's necessary that he needs to do or not do in the course of weeks and months of work, he just deals with sort of head on, right? And as somebody who has a massive amount of work to do, being single-minded probably means he doesn't see his family as much as he would like. He doesn't probably do much. Apparently he likes playing cards, occasional card game. You see once a year there's a trip, but for 15 years of his life, it's all consuming. Some people, you can relate. Imagine you're consumed a little too heavily by Facebook or Netflix or that person you're dating, and it becomes very heavy. It's a lot. Well, his becomes fragmented into millions and millions of things. All these fights, all these people, all these cards, for years, for decades. Starts to narrow down. So in the course of that, how much time do you have to deal with any of those things? So this becomes the man's life. And no matter what, if you know business and you know what it is to be a CEO and you know how complex that kind of thing is, even on a surface level, he's done the impossible. Which is why it'll be challenging for whoever at WME takes over some of this job, if they do. Be very challenging because he has found Band-Aids and little workarounds for all of these weird little challenges that they have. So that's the deal. Then you got Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz's world he's this visceral person, both he and Nick, who have kind of surrounded themselves with different offenses and defenses of the way to deal with the things that the world shoves at them. A world that's been unforgiving to them, a world that has been challenging and negative and they don't trust. And I mean the world. I don't mean fighting in a cage. I mean the world. As a result, they have become stronger and tougher. Their love of the martial arts has given them purpose and so forth. And you get to the point where, and they don't love fighting. I shouldn't say that. I was about to say nobody really does, but that is entirely untrue. There are people that, Jorge Masvidal, as much as he feels that those nerves, because they all do, everybody does, that's part of it, he does love fighting. And there are those special ones. These guys don't love it. They'll tell you. They're like, sucks, it hurts, it's hard. Those things are inherently logically true for all of us. So these are small insights into who these guys are. And you try to put yourself in their shoes, especially if you think you don't like them. The idea of trying to be, empathetic, to deploy empathy, is to be able to put yourself into someone else's mind. And that's easier to try to do if there's someone you like. What would it be like being The Rock? Man, that'd be probably wicked. I'd like to imagine, oh man, I bet it's just blowjobs and like parties and like that's easy to imagine. It's a lot harder, but a lot more valuable to deploy empathy in a situation with somebody you dislike. So if you were to dislike either of these two guys, it's harder, but way more valuable for you if you can achieve it. You try to put yourself in a situation of their challenges. You're working, and there's easy. You could, either one of them, you can say, well, Nate Diaz is a millionaire now. It's like, yeah, Dana White's almost a billionaire. It's not super relevant. And I know that right now, there are some percentage of people would like to just shut this off, but it really isn't. There's all kinds of true study done that, what's the difference? Sorry, I'm jumping to Dana for a second. What's the difference between 200 million and 600 million? The answer is nothing. Nothing whatsoever. Ever. Forever. Your grandchildren are set. And for Nate, because of where he grew up and probably how things are less important to him as a result. What's the difference between 6 million and 9 million? Nothing. It wouldn't be to me. If I had $6 million, I would never need to make another penny in the world. I would be in some lab that we built talking about fighting and analyzing fighting all day forever. And Nate, I don't know Nate on a heavy level, but he has many things in his life that he enjoys, and he can probably do them for no money. And he has plenty now. So money does not enter it. You're like, who are these people and what are they really about when things get hard or things are good? And Dana White is about continuing to make this thing bigger. Because trust me, the dude's not going to do 60 hours and be hassled and be away from his family for the next X years if he isn't driven to help this thing win. It's his family now. It's as much his family as his wife and his children is. Nate Diaz, on the other hand, I think wants to live his life. Nate Diaz wants to sell bongs, which he's making real money now as an influencer in the world of cannabis and marijuana. The dude, which is a thing that by all accounts he really likes and sees as a valuable medicine and therapy for people. So Nate Diaz is like, man, I don't need to fight. I made lots of money. I may never need to make any again. Sure, being in the media, I was going to say being in the media still helps with all the stuff he does, but I bet he doesn't even think that. He's just like, man, this guy said this, I don't know. But really, he's motivated by, you'd have to pay me a stupid amount of money to fight now. You'd have to pay me nonsense money, right? Because he's loving his life. As well he should. He earned it. The dude worked his brains out, fought all the tough fights, pushed himself through it, and entertained the shit out of us. So that's where he is. And then Dana White is motivated to help the UFC continue to win and grow. So he'd love to have Nate Diaz, but it's still a business. So he's like, he wants stupid money. The only way, and they do a bunch of math. They have spreadsheets and all these analysts in a room, and they do a bunch of math together because this is how things work. I wish it worked that I love fighting more than the next guy, and I'll outwork everybody. Therefore, they should take care of me. Everybody. I should be, contributing at the Fox desk because I work harder than all those guys, and I believe I peel back bigger layers. Life doesn't work that way. There is a system at play, an under the hood, behind the scenes system that you have to navigate, and a lot of it is based on money. So you have to be able to prove that they would have some value in putting me there. And if the next guy has 2 million Twitter followers, you're going to have a hard time proving that. Now, you could say, but hey, UFC, I believe I can contribute enough that it'll help grow it. It'll give value this way. The education will give value. That's tough to convince somebody. Nate Diaz, Dana White, exact same thing. A room full of bean counters go, well, he wants 7 million. I'm making up a number entirely fabricated. We could call it 5 million for simplicity. He wants 5 million. They're like, geez, Nate Diaz versus Cowboy Cerrone, would that be worth? Donald won $1 million, would that be worth? Maybe. Is that a main event? Maybe. But Dana White or Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor, oh yeah, we'll make like $50 million. Let's do that one. So anyways, neither one dislikes the other. Nate and Nick Diaz, on some level, they know that they've earned every penny that they've earned. They've earned it through hard work, drive, sacrifice, pain, all of those things. But without the forum and the environment to do it, they wouldn't have had the ability to do that. Nick has fought GSP, Anderson Silva, and he's made money on those. So these guys understand that somebody had to give them an environment to do it. And they know it's that Dana is the key to that. And so they probably, behind closed doors, are like, yeah, you know, my man, Dana's like, they don't hate Dana White or the UFC. And Dana White and the UFC have made plenty of money off these guys. They love them. Like, you sit Dana down, there's no cameras, there's no nothing. And you're like, Nick Diaz, you'd be like, oh, those guys, man, they're crazy, the way they fight. So you remove 2 quotes from the public and 1 thing on Twitter, and you understand how, in the process of this conversation, I hope that you gather the idea to be critical of yourself for assigning meaning and then acting as if that meaning is true for the next bunch of years. Now you think someone hates each other, then you see this thing. Just let it go. Just let that stuff go and peek behind the curtain. But I took a long time to get to your answer. I hope in taking that time, some interesting thoughts were bounced around. But truthfully, I'm sure neither one of those guys hates each other. Mark might start breaking these into single questions. Let us know what you think of that. I took a little pause there before I started the next one, and that's what reminded me. All I'd have to do is pause for 2 seconds and then ask the next one, right? You know, let us know if you think that would be something you'd like. If Ask Robin Black, or we'd maybe title it something like Ask Robin Black Shorts, number 7-2 or something, and then the question itself. Or tell us how you think that would be a logical way to if that's something you'd want, and if there'd be a logical way to list that. Because, we release these, they're an hour and a half sometimes. As you can see, I ramble on. If they were 7 or 8 minutes, would you be more inclined to just pick and choose some that you like? Let us know. All right. At Joe Willett, K1. Thoughts on GSP's timeline for the Bisping fight and how much it will hurt the division. July seemed perfect in my opinion. Okay, my friend? July did not seem perfect in GSP's opinion. You know what I mean? Right? July seemed perfect in Robin Black's opinion and yours. Apparently, it did not seem perfect in GSP's opinion. Now, he's the guy who has to do the fight. So my opinion and yours is probably, it's irrelevant. But you've raised some interesting thoughts for me on this, and ones that I've been thinking about over the years. I don't know if we've breaking these up yet, but if we are, and you didn't watch the last question that we had with Nate Diaz, I was throwing out some thoughts on understanding each other. And being able to, instead of just react to what somebody said, because there's a million reasons they might say it, fear, exhaustion, any number of them, learn who they might be and what makes us all different, what things we like. And so what I'm going to say to you that I take out of this, what I find really interesting, one of your things is thoughts on GSP's timeline and how much it hurts the division, as well as July seemed perfect in my opinion. Now, we're all different and we all like different things. And I've over the years come to really appreciate the differences in what we like about fighting. And there is a collection of fans that love the structure of it. Okay, this is the division, this is the next guy. This might happen at this time. If this happens here, it can be, and that constructing of the outline of how it's going to go, who's going to fight who, where are they going to fight, what pay-per-views and on, how, and all of that. And I used to kind of be like, I don't get it. But now I understand how different we all are and how we like different things. And that game of the puzzle pieces, putting it together. Why is Sean Shelby or Joe Silva good at that? Because they love it. They love just finding that little perfect mix. And so do you, I think, my friend. And so do many. So do many. It's also why people ask about what fight would be next. And although I'm just like, I don't know. You tell me what fight's next and I'll go crazy about it. I'll start obsessing over it. That's because I'm of some category of people who don't seem to find this jigsaw puzzle of puzzle pieces to like build the show and build the division and stuff. I don't connect to it as well. But it's cool that you do, and it's cool that people do. And I'm hoping that questions like this now, I'm looking and realizing that I want to learn, and that my answer for a while has been, what fight, people would ask, what fight do you think should be next? Or, who should fight who and who should fight who and the winner for the title, or who should get the next title shot? My answer was like, I don't know, man. I don't find that interesting. And now I've thought about it, and I think that I could learn a lot from this. I could learn a lot about the way that what excites other people. This is all of us like this sport. You don't sit here and watch an hour and a half long thing on Robin Black's YouTube channel answering questions unless you love fighting. So I can learn about what is the excitement that you gain from this type of hierarchy and this type of puzzle solving. I mean, when I see Cub Swanson get better in the later rounds against the later 2 rounds against Doo Ho Choi, and then the later in a longer fight against Artem, I love seeing him solve those puzzles and adapt. So there's some connection to what I'm enjoying and what you're enjoying. But I'm keeping an open mind, and I'm trying to learn about the why. Why do people like that? Because when I look at it, it's like, how much will it hurt the division? My thinking is nothing ever hurts any division. Ever. Because if you said, how much will it affect fights in this weight class over the next 6 months? Every answer to that always would be, it'll affect it hugely. This guy's now the champ. Oh, okay, well, Ronda's the champ. Now these people are fighting. There's always an effect. There's always a huge effect. Everybody, this guy's the champ. He's got this fight. That guy's injured. Everything affects everything all the time, forever. But no matter what, whether it's in 3 months or 7 months, Bisping retires, George wins, both of them get hurt, and Yoel's now fighting against Rockhold for the title. It all changes every second. And so sometimes we look at it and we go, this is going to really this is bad for the division. All it takes is one blown knee and everything changes anyways. It's always changing, always, forever. Everything is. And so nothing's ever bad for any division, ever. Ever. Conor is a 2-division champ. That's bad for the division. I mean, is it? Why? I mean, we also got to categorize that there's 100 different goods and bads. If you're the UFC and this guy's everything time he fights, it makes $10 million. That's good. If you're Jose Aldo, that's bad. If you're, again, Conor or the UFC, like, I'm the and of course they took away a second belt, but if they'd have kept it, it's like, I'm the 2-division champ. I'll fight 4 times this year, and combined I'll do, again, for Conor or the UFC, I don't care who makes how much money. Doesn't affect me and my love of fighting. I'm happy for the fighters if they do well. But you'd be like, yeah, Conor McGregor made them and himself tons of money. Great. But if you are somebody who really is driven by justice, right? And sometimes justice is one of those motivations that we have, a sense of justice. This guy's the number 1 guy. He deserves this title shot. That's a justice. It's a motivation of justice. This guy has done these things, and the world, the organization, the universe should do the right thing and give him that ability to fight for the title. I mean, so if justice is something that matters to you, and I once said this to somebody and they're like, you don't understand, this isn't about justice, this is what's right. I'm like, to you, somebody who sees justice, fairness, the world needs to be fair. But the frustration of that thinking is that undeniably, the world is not fair. That is just a truth we have to deal with. So if you go through the world motivated by, it must be fair. You will be disappointed every day. You'll be outraged or disappointed or stressed out or feel hurt or feel, betrayed by the world. But you know it's unfair. You know that, you know this. You know this. We know that the world is unfair. If we accept that the world is unfair, we can navigate it with these strange things that come at us. This happened. That's not fair. Well, it's going to not be fair next week. Something not fair happened to us a month ago. Something not fair happened to us a week ago. Something not fair happened to my spouse. Always. So it's okay to be frustrated at the unfairness, but it is not okay to be surprised by it. You can't let yourself be, every single time something unfair or unreasonable happens, if you are surprised, you've just decided not to see the truth. The truth is the world is very unfair and unforgiving. The universe is unforgiving. So George St. Pierre is fighting Michael Bisping. That's unfair. I agree. That is unfair. That's unfair to Yoel Romero. But the UFC, the machine that helps shape this, says it's very fair to us. We've worked really, really hard to build this thing in a way that sell pay-per-views and make the audience excited and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So according to their criteria, it is very fair. According to Bisping's criteria, he's like, I don't care about what these particular things happen or did happen. I want to make the biggest fight possible. I think this guy's smaller than me. I think I can beat him. I think he is he's going to be rusty, and I'm going to make more money than I've ever made, and I'm almost blind in one eye, and I fought my brains out, and I think I deserve this. So to him, it's fair. To George, it's fair. To the UFC, it's fair. But it's unfair to many of the rest of us. But that's how the universe works. So I'm not saying ignore it. I'm not saying don't take action. Don't fight back against it. Definitely do that, especially if you assess it and you can have some influence. But don't just complain about it, because complaining is not action. It's tricking you into thinking that you're taking action, and really all you're doing is making yourself upset. And don't be surprised by it. Don't keep being surprised every time that the universe reinforces to you that it's unfair. It just is. And if you accept it, work around it, and not be surprised by, oh shit, some unfair thing happened. Well, it always does. Okay, what do? I'll pivot. Okay, damn it, that unfair thing happened again. Okay, unfair thing happens to you. Two main options. Be mad, upset, hurt, scared, freak out, or go, unfair thing happened again. Which of those two will give you a better benefit? Crazy, unfair. Man, there's been a lot of unfair things happening to me and my family lately. If your reaction is that, you then are not compromised in your ability to deal with it, and you go, okay, well, unfair things have been happening a lot. Okay, what do I do? Okay, I'll have to go back here, work on that thing, improve that thing, and then call this person and study that. You will be able to be better equipped to deal with the unfair nature of the world if you are not shocked, horrified, outraged, and surprised by it. It sucks. But if you don't allow yourself to react poorly to it, you can then move on from it. And we always go back to fighting. Who's that army guy that Kelvin beat up? Tim Kennedy. Sorry, Tim Kennedy. I have a memory issue. People have been watching my work with Ramdeen and stuff for a long time know that names, for whatever reason, end up being tricky for me over time. I think it was after a concussion. I don't know why. I'll have to look into it. I blame it on Forrest Whitaker. It was Forrest Whitaker's fault. That's an inside joke, but it's Forrest Whitaker it is. So Tim Kennedy, Yoel Romero spilt the ice. And then the refs were responding. And now we're at a minute and a half. And now we're at a minute and 40 seconds. And now they're wiping him off. Yoel Romero's going like this. Hey, what? It's not my fault. Right there. And whatever he's doing, right? Tim Kennedy freaks out. Go back and watch it. Freaks out. As a result, his focus is lost. He's performing worse. He loses. That example is a microcosm for how we react to bad things. Unfair things. That was unfair. You all cheated. I can't believe it. Can't you refs see it? Look at everybody. The audience. Can you believe this? Lost his focus. Tim Kennedy is a hyper-focused, incredibly skilled, mentally tough guy, but his outrage caused him to perform poorly in the rest of that fight, and he lost. If you react to unfairness in the world that way, you are taking yourself out of the fight. So I'll just leave it at that. That was very meandering, as is the case often, from Bisping versus George, but I enjoyed it, and I thank you for that question, and I hope you guys will help me learn more about your different aspects of why you love this beautiful game. It's Chris and Kuma. Is it possible for MMA to become a martial art within itself? What does it mean for those martial arts it incorporates? That's a cool question, my friend. I will tell you, Bruce Lee, I saw this and I meant to bring one of my Bruce Lee books to use some of his quotes. So unfortunately, I did not. Mark and I were looking at our tickets to Dallas, and I got off the track. I'm working on that piece with TSN for George St. Pierre, about George St. Pierre, and a bunch of things. So I'm sorry I didn't bring my Bruce Lee quotes, but if you look online, obviously you can get books. There's Striking Truth, Striking Thoughts is one that I really like that has a lot of his quotes. But you can Google Bruce Lee quotes and you'll get 100. And they're really interesting little segments of thought. And you can skim them, or sometimes you can grab one or two, especially in that one book. They're categorized into chunks, so on life, on martial arts, and different things, and then kind of play around with them or use them to research other ideas and look at other people's thoughts on them. But Bruce Lee talked about that martial arts were about ignoring doctrines. So doctrine, what is a doctrine? I mean, a doctrine is an outline or a set of rules or a structure or a what's to do's and not what nots to do. Indoctrination is to be put into a doctrine of ideas and thought. And doctrines are limiting. Karate, we must take this stance. Kung Fu, we must take this stance. In Judo, we do this. Those are all doctrines, all martial arts. Every martial art is a doctrine of thought. And they're all just beautiful ways to go and explore aspects of the martial arts, especially early in your journey. Traditional martial arts are incredible, especially if you start as a child or any age, but if you intend to dabble or gather different ideas of the martial arts over your life, any one of them is great. None of them are wrong. They're just doctrines of ideas and collections of ways to explore something. No, every martial art is beautiful, and I mean that. You'll always have there'll be little snobby sections on certain people like Aikido. No, Aikido is a beautiful metaphor for life. Push hands, belt wrestling, everything. Every martial art has beautiful aspects to it. But if we're talking about martial arts, fighting, again, Bruce Lee, his most basic principles, the deeper he explored, was that he explored particular Kung Fu, and then he explored these, and then he was studying some Muay Thai. And over time, it became very obvious it was not about any of these doctrines. So MMA has become, it's already changing. These are concepts that have been discussed a lot. I'll discuss this again with Mike Brown because he's somebody I've really enjoyed talking about this idea with. So in Dallas, you'll probably see it in the next 3 or 4 days if you're watching this when it comes out. If you're watching it later, look for my talk with Mike Brown. I like to explore these ideas with him. The flaw, and I use that loosely as it applies to fighting, combat itself. Because there's no flaw in Judo as a martial art. It's a beautiful martial art. There's no flaw in karate. When you go and you study karate as a child or as an adult, and it makes you move and understand your body and learn the martial arts, and there's no flaws in it. But for the purpose of winning in combat, its flaws are its indoctrinations. Its flaws are its structures. If you always do this, eventually I understand you always do this, whatever this is, anything. We always do a particular motion. We always do this. If you always do it, it's because at one point you believed it was the ultimate choice in this situation. But the ultimate choice in this situation is the thing that beat the old ultimate choice. Once I know what your ultimate choice is, I learn to beat it. Someone develops a way. And over time, the doctrines of the individual martial arts start to have flaws in combat because I know what you will do, and eventually it doesn't take a lot to beat you. I also know what you do not do. I know what you believe is wrong. It is wrong to strike this way. It is wrong to kick this way. You must kick this way. Those are, again, doctrines. And that's how we beat you. Mixed martial arts developed as the answer to those flaws. It developed as we found holes in the different games of the different fighters. Then everybody learned a little bit of the basics. Then we found holes to that. It's changing rapidly. Right now, we're in a time of change, time of creative change in how coaches and martial artists train. But there is still a particular type of over-structuring that happens in mixed martial arts. In the gym, you train it this way. The coach shows this. Everybody knows that we must have this underhook in this situation. So what's the answer to something as simple? This will give you a good idea. Simple question. We all know to be dominant in this position, you must have an underhook. Okay, so first we all agree that that's true. You must have an underhook. That means we fight for the underhook. It becomes about who wins that fight. Whoever wins that fight is then rewarded with being in the best position. And we agree to do that for years. And that's what's done in the gym. That is the doctrine of underhook fighting and pummeling in the gym. That's just a fact. Some other guy will be like, that fight to get that underhook is such a battle that everybody's committed to. What if we gave him the underhook? We just acknowledge that we don't win that battle. Okay, give it up. Underhook's gone. What would be the answer to that? We would develop power, technique, and strategy and sensitivity with the overhook in such a way that everybody who deals with that underhook is dealing with the fighting for the underhook. They're fighting for the underhook. We're fighting for the underhook. Oh, we got the underhook. We're winning. We just change that truth, that former truth. Make that a lie. Make that not true. The underhook does not guarantee victory because my overhook is so good, and you do not train with people who understand the leverage of the overhook the way that I do. Not me, just for the record. If you're listening on iTunes or something, I'm not saying I am the master of the overhook. I am not. I'm using the example from a first person as a fighter or a coach. We will become so good with the overhook in ways that you do not understand that we will make the truth of whoever has the underhook wins untrue. That's simple. That's simple fact. Is the limitations of the belief that indoctrination that you must have the underhook limits people from becoming so masterful at the overhook that the underhook becomes irrelevant. That one simple truth right there, that one simple truth of study and taking what works and making it not work, taking what's true and making it untrue, you apply that to everything. So mixed martial arts started to have rules that were untrue that we all accepted as truth. Now, again, I will be speaking to a number of coaches this weekend. Duke said, let's chat. Mike did. I'll find others that are there. I don't know for Raz. I'm sure he's got somebody on the card. And others. Stipe's got a great team, and people haven't chatted and dug into that. I'd like to talk to, if anybody's in contact with Stipe Miocic's coaching staff, please ask them to reach out to me on Twitter. I'd love to pick their brains because they got the best heavyweight in the world. So a lot of people are changing that now. And we're going back to the idea of mixed martial arts being about finding answers always forever. The continued growth and evolution in what we believe to be true in the martial arts, and then realizing that we are not at a fully formed level, which only a couple of years ago people would say, here's all the answers to MMA. Nobody smart is saying that anymore. They're saying this will constantly change, and in 2025, fighting will look so different, and there could be giant breakthroughs where suddenly for a year, everybody crawls on the ground. I've just made that one up. But where all of a sudden everybody's on one foot, like there will be giant, epic disruptions in how fighting is done, because now we understand there's a lot left to be done. But to me, when I know what you were asking is MMA its own martial art. I think it has been for the last few years to its detriment. I think martial arts are limiting concepts. A particular stream of martial arts, they're all limiting concepts, and I say that with the love of all of them. But I mean, for the purpose of growth, perpetual growth, sticking with one doctrine is limiting. And I think mixed martial arts became its own limiting doctrine. And I think now a lot of artistic and expressive creativity is happening, and that is being shattered. And I think that's a good thing. And what will happen to all these other martial arts? I hope nothing. I hope when I have children, maybe in the next couple of years, and they're 3 or 4 or 5, that I can have them wrestle, and I can have them study judo, and I can have them study karate. Would I like them to study MMA? Sure. But wouldn't it be great to have them start with some little things? Personally, off topic, I would start my children in gymnastics and go from there. Let them be aware of their body and space first. But I hope that answered your question. Let's take a look at another one. At Jungworth_Cam. Can you explain distance management and how Conor can cause Floyd problems with his weird range? Okay. So I started studying Conor before he was in the UFC. I was a fan of what he was doing. I could see where it was going. I could have never predicted he would get to this point. I started breaking down, if you go back and you look at in June 2015, he was fighting Chad Mendes, and I did 2 breakdowns. Conor McGregor winning conditions and Chad Mendes winning conditions. What they could look at to create scenarios to increase their likelihood of winning the fight. And that was when I first started discussing distance management. And back then in MMA, there weren't even really other breakdowns. Not many. There was BJJ Scout doing a lot of BJJ stuff. And of course, Jack Slack, the OG. Definitely always read Jack's stuff. He's a he's a lover of the art of fighting. And Lawrence Kenshin, and that was about it. Lawrence breaks down and analyzes striking in a way different than everybody else. But we were out in the wilderness, and a lot of people weren't super interested. Now, it was our mission, and Lawrence and I in particular, we would go train together, and we would hang out, and he came to watch some fights at Fight Network, and we were like, we have to make it so that people care about this. And they do now. At least the world that I live in, I get tweets and messages and stuff from people, and they're talking about the fight. They're not talking about the Twitter beef. And that's what I like more. So it has been a great, I realize that's only 2 years ago. And for the last 8 weeks, we haven't been able to do breakdowns, something we really want to do, and hopefully we will do in June. We're finding Aaron has some green screen ways we might be able to do it. So we'll be working on that. I miss it a lot. But it's been fun to explore different things. It's been fun to explore different ideas and grow in different ways. But 2015, Conor McGregor winning conditions, I don't think there was a lot of conversation about distance management in UFC and mixed martial arts before that. Not that people weren't aware of it. Coaches and fighters were very aware. I know that the TriStar guys and the Ray Longo team, they were bringing in Stephen Thompson a lot before that. And everybody was looking at trying to figure out how to beat Lyoto. And so they started to realize, if you look at boxing, and maybe this will answer your question a little bit about Conor and Floyd. Will that ever happen? What's the obstacles to that? We'll talk about that on another day. Let's talk about and also, why does every MMA fighter want to fight a boxer now? They all want to get killed? You know what I mean? They all, oh yeah, I'm going to box against Joshua. Are you out of your fucking mind? Junior, I know you got a big fight this weekend, and I hope you have a great performance, but don't be crazy, man. But, okay, so boxing, when you watch boxers, it's really cool. Why would they waste time out in this big distance. They don't have the tool to be able to hit you from too much further away than from their knuckle to your chin away from that. Now, they have the ability to close distance really quickly, but the other guy, much the way a fastball hitter has changed his vision, the other guy can see those, when you go in to do something, his lifetime reads that pretty quick. So to a certain degree, wherever we start boxing, we just kind of go away and throw those ranges away until we get into the range that we can do our thing. And some guys like to be a step further out. 2 steps out is not uncommon in boxing. Play out there, make him chase. There's a lot of things you can do. But when we add kicking to it, and moving into kicking range or hitting you as you come in, all of a sudden, the little circle of where we can touch each other, plus the circle of where we can move quickly to get into range to touch each other, expands dramatically with kicking. And in that breakdown in 2015, we talked about a number of things. And McGregor, I still stand by the basic fundamentals of the broad strokes of what that analysis was saying in 2015, which is flim-flam, distance management. I don't even use that term much anymore because we need to keep expanding our understanding of the language of things in anything. People don't use the same terms in computer programming. They use some of the fundamental basics, and then they expand so that they can go deeper. And the Celtic cross, or the left hand, straight left hand. And flim-flam to me was an under-specified concept about pressuring at distance. Now, if I'm using hook kick, and it was a combination, and this wasn't, maybe analyzed as deeply back then as the way that I sort of feel it in my skin now, is the combination of the threat of my kicks, hook kicks, round kicks, side kicks, front kicks. When Conor added that front kick against Mendes, was brilliant. Low kicks added against Diaz in the second fight. When I add the threat of the kicks at distance, your choice is either stay out there further than my kicks, so I only have to edge in to kick you, or come forward. Now, we add to that a body language, and many physical and psychological threats. And you can not buy what I'm saying now, but I'll talk to Eddie Alvarez. And if I talk to Eddie this weekend before his fight, not gonna talk to him about this, because no matter what, I'm always gonna keep respect for when these guys decide to take time to talk to me. I'm going to put in the front always a respect for what they have to do this weekend and appreciation that they're going to take the time to talk to me. So if I'm talking to Eddie on Friday or Saturday morning, I'm not going to bring up Conor McGregor. I'm not. If I talk to Eddie Sunday morning, it'll be part of the conversation. But if you talk to Eddie, who will admit it, and I've seen him admit it to some degree, Aldo will not, or hasn't yet, from my understanding, but Poirier has, Brandao has, guys that Conor fought in the past do. I've had people witness the psychological effect he's had on other fighters. There were fighters in his Cage Warrior days who broke down tears at the weigh-ins. He does things. The ability to influence your mind, for humans to influence each other's mind with behavior, language, physical expression, body language, any of these things, that's all real. You can go study it. And magicians study it, politicians study it, performers of different kind do. It's real. And motorcyclists went by. That's cool. It's real. And McGregor has studied it. And some purposefully, and some through his own oh wow, that worked when I did this, it caused this. So that between that threat, the implied psychological and physical threat, and then the kicking at distance, it'll make you come in. As you come rushing in, slide back, create and maintain the distance, because if I move towards you 2 feet and you move back 2 feet, the exact space has been maintained. That's very simple. It's a very simple way to look at it. So if I close my eyes and we are let's say you are 1 foot away from me being able to punch you, and you grit your teeth and you come sliding forward 5 feet, I will slide back 4 and punch you. Okay? You know what I mean? Where I am now at the point, the end of my knuckles is 1 foot from you. So if I slide back 1 foot less than you slide forward, I'll crack you. So you slide forward 2, I'll just slide back 1. I can touch you. You slide forward 3, I'll slide back 2. If there's a distance between us, the distance you slide forward or charge forward, minus the distance that I move back, should equal the space between us. And I touch you. It's simple. Well, it's simple for him. It'd be hard for us because that's feeling. That is an understanding. That's in your skin. That has been internalized. It has more in common with feel than it does with science. And that's why it's easy to explain. We're this far apart. You move forward a little more than I move back, and I touch you. And I hit you. So it's easy to explain in that sense, but how? That's the trick. That's how and why and how it's trained. And my goal over time is to be able to share with you the truth of that. And you can't make this up. You can't infer it or theorize it and act like you know it. You have to study with the coaches and with the fighters and with your own body, because it's a feel. So if I say I slide back 1 foot, when I start a foot away from touching you with my knuckle, I slide back 1 foot less than you drive forward, we're in range. We can say that. Then you say, well, how do you do that? The next step is, well, it's a feel. It's a feeling that's developed. It's an awareness. It's a physical kinesthetic awareness. Okay, great. The next question is, how? You keep going, how? That's how you study something ongoing. That's also why you are never an expert, why you never want to be considered an expert, why you never want to look at yourself as an expert, why you never want to claim you're an expert. Because the second that you do, you've stopped growing. Your ego is now affecting the way that you look at things and the way that you interact with the world. And even if you were right, which you won't be, because nobody can catch up to the truth about the universe, you just keep studying it. Even if you were, though, it will change. And you won't, since you're the greatest. You're an expert. You know, look, you know. We're set. That's why you need to keep that white belt mentality, which McGregor has. I don't know if I've answered this question very well. I think I've answered a little bit about sort of very fundamental truths about that, playing with distance. This is an off-topic thing, but and I have mentioned this before, but it really bothers me. I feel like in my analysis and kind of being on the front end of some of the game of analysis, I did a very big disservice, and many others are carrying this disservice on, of just taking categories and throwing them out. Oh, great timing. Oh man, he's got a weak chin. Oh, this one, as long as he incorporates low kicks but moves out on angles. These are all just words. And if we just make the word typical and make the word familiar, we haven't explained anything. We haven't really explained anything. Cutting angles. What does that really mean? How many times do we need somebody on the commentary or at the desk to say that in the same way? I realize that language is something we get super comfortable with. And then when we hear it again, we go, oh, okay, right. Run up the middle, or slap shot, or, feints to an overhand right. But do we really understand it? Or are we just like, oh, okay, cool. I recognize that term. I've heard the term cutting angles a lot, and I know that Dominic Cruz does it. So, Cody Garbrandt, he cuts angles. He did it better than Dominic Cruz. And that may be enough. You watch fights 3 times a year. That is more than enough. And hearing a familiar term about closing distance, you heard it with Ronda, and now you hear it with Habib, or now you hear it with, Yoel Romero, or somebody who's great at it. You go, oh yeah, right, okay, that. And that could be enough. But if we really want to study, and we really want to go further, and we really want to expand our knowledge and share knowledge, we can't just throw out these categories and act like, oh, we're good now, But, well, we'll keep working. A couple more. So this is really cool that this came right after. Nature, SEKOND. What has contributed the most to your knowledge of martial arts? And in brackets, some options. Particular books, fighting experience, watching tape. That's cool. We were just talking about kind of the last question was about explaining something fairly fundamental, but something that often now just gets categorized, Oh, this fight's about range management. Well, that's cool. When we picture that, if you watch a lot of fighting, you picture, Stephen Thompson out there, and you picture Tyron Woodley, and, that's cool. That actually may be enough. You get an idea in your head. Although in some people's case, I just realized why I'm thinking about this. Why this matters. For a second, I thought maybe it was only because I'm, evangelically motivated to share and push forward the understanding of the martial arts, but I realize why this is now. So I just used as an example Stephen Thompson and Tyron Woodley, which, if that is the thing that pops to your mind when somebody is talking about a fight, and they say, this is going to be a game of range management, and all of a sudden, that's the fight that jumps to mind because you heard that said a lot in that fight, that's done a disservice. Also, if the only thing we took away from that fight, which a lot of people will say, I hated that fight, it was boring. The reason you hated that fight is because there was nothing of any consequence or interest to you. And that is not disrespectful. That's my fault. That's the UFC's fault. That is, I was going to say the commentator's fault, but that was probably Joe and Dom, and they probably did a great job. I just didn't hear it. I was there for that fight. And Anik. Those three guys are great together. That is the desk's fault. That is the producer's fault. That is the presentation of the way that we presented fighting and not dared the audience to understand more's fault. The reason we see these fights and people say, that was a boring fight, it sucked, is because we failed you. We failed you. We never showed you the interesting little tidbits that are happening. We presented the macro so aggressively. Oh man, these guys hate each other. Somebody's getting knocked out. This one's not going the distance. Okay, well, if that's our fault, if that's what we're telling you, and by hyping that concept, these guys have unfinished business, bad blood. This one is not going the distance. Somebody's always got to go. The winner gets a title shot. We have failed you. Because if we are telling you that is what is great about what you're going to see, and not every fight gives you that because it can't, then you don't get that, then you think it's not great. Our fault. Our fault. UFC's fault, Robin Black's fault, the fault of everybody who covers fighting. Our fault. I apologize. That is, and I will promise not to judge or overreact when somebody says this fight card sucked, not a lot of finishes. Now I've realized that is as much my fault as anybody else who does this job, because we never showed you what was going on in there. The simple example that I will use is football. People who love football, or even basketball. In basketball, they zip down there, that thing scores. They zip down there, that thing scores. It just happens over and over again, and then really the only last 2 minutes matter. That's a weird one, actually. That's a terrible example. I'm going to retract that example. And I'm going to throw out football. In football, if the game was all 1 yard runs, back and forth 1 yard runs, would they boo? I think the answer is no. I haven't exactly watched a lot of football games, but my feeling is the answer is no. In fact, I just found an even better example. Soccer, or football as they call it in the rest of the world. 0-0, 5 shots on net all game, but they understand their sport. They understand the push. They've made some subtle progress over here. Oh, no. But now they got to hold on to that. They understand their sport. They understand the subtleties of their sport. They understand the details of it. They understand the threats that are happening. They understand the little shifts in movement and momentum, and all that's happening in every moment of every fight. Every moment. Sometimes it's happening through the danger that's being presented, and if you've studied what's going on in their mind and what they're reading, it can become a fascinating mental battle if you if you have been shared, if you've been shown those things, which again, we failed to show you. Or, oh man, they just hugged each other against the fence. That's as good an example as football, the most popular sport in the world, is those fighting for position. Just that spot where you like almost progress and then you don't, and then it's slightly reversed and then he has the ball. That's football, man. And it is the most popular sport in the world. It is a sport of subtlety. It's a sport of low scoring. Nobody gets knocked out in that sport. Ever. Not ever. Some people get knocked out in that sport. But it is subtle, and the audience has over the years learned it. And the little fighting against the cage, struggling for position to gain a slight advantage to your position on the field, it's exactly like football or soccer. So we have failed you, and we'll keep working on it. I don't know. This did not answer your question. What has contributed the most to your knowledge of the martial arts? So I think maybe this will be the last question today. I'm going to pass the other two. There's stuff about Tough, and then some stuff about Bellator, which I do want to answer, but we'll answer it closer to the Bellator show. And then Poirier versus Alvarez. Again, that's coming out any minute. Yes, contributed to the study of martial arts. Now, it's the thing I love to do, and I would love to share about how much I enjoy it and the different things. And it's really, most of my friends don't really give a shit how I study fighting. So the fact that you asked is very kind. But I would like to answer it in a way where we get general about the deep study of anything. Maybe, where we can kind of look at how anybody dedicates themselves to study in a particular topic. And so I think there's a long ongoing journey that involves a lot of different things. Okay, so what I'm going to do actually is, I'm sorry to leave this here, but and I shared this in an old Ask Robin Black, but I'm going to take a book that I have. I'm going to bring it on the plane to Dallas. On the plane to Dallas, I'm going to gather and do a little bit of breakdown work on Do Ho Choi and the Korean Zombie, because from Dallas, I'm going to Korea, and we're going to try to build you a bit of a travel journal from that for the YouTube channel. But I'm also going to bring a book that I have called Mastery. And it's a great book. And it actually breaks down, I've referenced this before, it breaks down the different types of study that you should do, from general idea to apprenticeship style, being immersed in something, making lateral moves to study other things that connect to that. The truth is, ongoing, you have to do it all. You have to. You want to be an expert in something over time, or an expert for that moment in time, because there are no experts. You want to develop expertise, move towards expertise, maybe would be the best way to put it. You have to use as many different ways as possible. There is no doubt in my mind. So I've watched so many thousands of hours of tapes. I mean, I've commentated 350 plus shows with Ramdeen. If we average those at 2 hours each, that's 700 hours just of commentary. Then I've got to add thousands more hours on top of that of tens of thousands of watching fights, rewatching them, breaking them down, going through it slowly, working on the timeline. So doing the work. I'm doing some work for TSN, and I met with one of their top guys over there, senior producers named Ken Volden, and we were talking about the breakdowns. And because it's something I'd like to keep doing, and something that could happen with TSN if we find the right sponsor to make it work, it's been discussed. Anyways, I spoke to this man, Ken Volden, who's been in the game of television and creating, art around sport for many years. And he's not the deepest. He's started to realize and appreciate fighting more and more, but it's the world of sport and storytelling within sport. And I talked to him, I showed him breakdowns. And then he asked about the process. And I said, it's 30 or 40 hours of this. Gathering the fights take 10 hours. Then watching them when you have 10 fights to watch takes you another, 4 hours. And then picking the moments within it and watching them in slow motion takes you another 4 or 5 hours. And then sending that cut to the editor to amass you something. And even though you wanted to have 3 minutes, you gathered so much, now it's 12, and then cutting it down. By the end of it, it takes you a week, 8 hours a day 5 or 6 days a week, so 40, 50 hours. And he asked me, and then we chatted about it, and he was like, well, yeah, I really like them. I mean, he really enjoyed the storytelling. And he goes, but for you, the best part about the most important part about this is doing the work. You've done 100 of these, and they took you, 50 hours each. That's 100 times 50 is 1,000, 5,000 hours. So if the 10,000 hours to get good at something is true, I spent 5,000 just in 100 of the breakdowns. But his observation as somebody who's been around people becoming good in their craft for years was, great, this breakdown's excellent, it's fun, 100,000 people enjoyed it, that's really good, it has all these other values, but the important part was doing it. And that's, I think, I'm going to bring in this book Mastery and chart it out for you for the next one. But the truth is, you just got to do it. You got to go in and you got to consume. And most important is you can't skip steps. And I've seen, because there's the popularity in breakdowns and in that type of analysis, there's some bullshit stuff out there too, where somebody will watch something, they'll find the first interesting point, you can hear it, when they're talking about it, that they only figured this out last week. That thing, you're in a rush to put that out. If you internalized it and let it become part of your skin and your blood, and then watched it, and then, spent 2 or 3 years with that factoid inside you and allowed it to inform you about these other ideas, and then see them change, and then study how this was painted and realize what connection that might have to how fighting is crafted, and then have this incredible cup of coffee and start thinking about how coffee was made and and seeing in all things the patterns to mastery and bringing that in, and all of these different ideas, hearing from people from different eras and what they did then, and using that to inform what you know now, and seeing the pattern and reading the history and observing the history, then bringing it over, and then shattering your own ideas and looking to disprove what you believe, and et cetera, forever. If that sounds fun to you, just start doing it. If it sounds like a path that would give you pleasure for the next 10 years, start doing it. If it doesn't, and you're just like, man, Jack Slack sure seems to get a lot of retweets, don't do it. It's too much. Like, it's, you'll get bored of it. It's going to take you a lifetime. And the other thing is, you really do, one of the things that will differentiate me, you've got, Dominic Cruz and Dan Hardy and Daniel Cormier and Brian Stan. And then you've got everybody else that's full of shit. Not all of them. I mentioned Jack and BJJ Scout. I don't know what BJJ Scout and Jack, maybe they fought. And the reason I am in a different role is I got the shit kicked out of me a bunch of times. And I trained as a fighter for like 5 or 6 years, late in life. And you have to do that. And you may watch or listen to or read somebody who doesn't, and they may have good verbiage and find a way to get ideas across to you. And I'm sorry, they're full of shit. If you don't understand the reality of what happens in there, and because you know why I can say that? Because I know I don't understand what Brian Stan faced, and I fought 9 times, but I fought on such a low level that I just barely got enough of a taste to understand that I cannot not ever truly know what Daniel Cormier just did with Anthony Johnson. I can never know that. And if I can never know that after 6 years of living as a fighter and making every sacrifice and trying it on every level and never giving up when I lost and failing and being embarrassed and being hurt bad and having everything, all of those experiences, then somebody who just spars once a month or spars they can never know it. They can never know it. And they never will. And they'll never be truly, we might believe, maybe, no, I was going to say they'll never truly be a great analyst who's never fought. But that's not true. There will be. There just aren't right now. But there will be, because Bruce Lee barely fought. And Firas barely fought. And they are great analysts. So that is not necessarily true. But in most cases, there is a truth both of those people were around those truths so deeply. For us, is in the corner and close to the truth. His own brother, and George is his own brother, really. He's so close to it that he understands it deeper than I do, and he understands it deeper than many fighters who've been deep in there do. So there are other ways to understand it, but you can't understand it, viewing it like Dungeons and Dragons. You just can't. You never will. You never will. But it's still an ongoing road, and 5 years from now, what we know about fighting, it is our job to publicly mock ourselves and realize how little we knew, and draw attention to our errors, look for our errors, look to realize that we misunderstood something. You have to do that. You also have to really, to go far, continuing study, you have to try not to think of yourself as an expert. I also believe if you've ever heard anyone criticize a top coach or a top fighter and they've never coached or fought, you should just stop listening to them. Because if for somebody, to say that Duke Roufus, his weakness is as a coach, when they don't understand how training is really done on that level, just write them off. Criticism is not logical in fighting, because there are no, you just are where you are, and you are where you are on the path, and you are what you are on the night. And if we see 3 fights and we say somebody's really bad at slipping their head, and we really don't understand that, they got blinded on the first punch, or they were in a state of panic or whatever, and you'll only understand that if you've ever had those experiences, you realize that you cannot criticize these people. If you got in there once and realized the incredible challenge of overriding every natural instinct that you have, then you would never criticize that. I've seen other times where I was, online chat with people in the fight game, and they were mocking somebody's choices. And I think they were like a purple belt in jiu-jitsu or something, and they were mocking, I think it was Hector Lombard's choice in a position. And I'm like, this is somebody who has never had a nose full of blood and lungs burning with heat and a shoulder that doesn't work and a brain that has a humming and screeching noise that is so loud and he can barely see, and it's incredibly loud, and his mind is overriding himself. If they'd understand that, they'd never criticize the half guard choice that was made. But you can't understand that. So you can criticize all you like, but it's not the truth. Anyways, I've digressed all over the place, but I promise I will bring back in that book. It's called Mastery. I forget the author, but if you Google Mastery book, you'll find it. I recommend it highly. It's a real great book. Last time I was doing the Fight Companion with Rogan and Schaub and Eddie and those guys, Jamie mentioned having just read the book, and some laws of power, 55 laws of power or whatever, Robert Greene. He did another book about some laws of power and how you have rules and structures and rules of thumb in corporations and all that kind of stuff. I didn't read that book. That feels, maybe I will. At first I was like, I hate that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a good book.
48 Laws of Power. Did you read it? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes my feeling was, I don't want to be, have rules and structures of how I'm going to deal with, people I work with. I'd like to have an organic relationship, but then it always hasn't always gone perfectly, and I've found the internal structures of corporations and businesses to sometimes be the biggest challenge of all. I mean, like I said, I don't want to be arrogant about this, but I think I'm at a point where I could contribute something very different to that Fox desk, and I haven't yet, although it's been discussed and it's been mentioned, and potentially my weakness or weaknesses in dealing with the internal structures of these businesses could be a part of that. Something I should think about. I should always look for your flaw in something. So maybe I'll read that book. And if I do, I'll tell you about it later. But get Mastery and look it over, and by the next time I see you, we'll chat about it. It's been fun, guys. Thank you. Watch for a last minute, we'll call it last looks, championship rounds, last looks at UFC 211 with Ram Dean. We're shooting it tomorrow. Then we're going to shoot a bunch of other fight stuff. Then Mark and I are getting on a plane. And next you'll see from us will be in Dallas. Black out.